Tonight, I'm going to tell you the chilling tale of the last house on Harrow Lane. This is the story of David Thompson, who dared to spend a night in the most haunted house in New England, only to discover that some doors should never be opened. When David Thompson received the email, he almost dismissed it as spam. "Spend a night in the most haunted house in New England for a chance to win $10,000, the subject line screamed. Normally, David wouldn't have given it a second thought, but he was struggling to make ends meet, and the allure of such a large sum of money was too tempting to ignore. The email claimed that the house in question was located on Harrow Lane, a desolate street on the outskirts of town. According to local legend, the house had been abandoned for over 50 years after the last family living there vanished without a trace. Numerous attempts to sell the property had failed as potential buyers reported strange occurrences during their visits, whispering voices, shadowy figures, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Curiosity piqued and desperation for money overriding his better judgment, David replied to the email. The response was immediate, giving him directions and a list of rules to follow. Most were standard fare. No damage to property, no attempting to leave before sunrise, and no outside communication devices allowed. The last rule, however, stood out. Under no circumstances should you enter the basement. David arrived at the house just before dusk. The structure loomed over him, its dark silhouette stark against the evening sky. The once grand Victorian-style mansion was now a crumbling relic, with boarded-up windows and an overgrown yard. He felt a chill as he approached the front door, the wood creaking ominously under his touch. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The grand foyer, with its tarnished chandelier and peeling wallpaper, spoke of a bygone era. David set up his camera equipment. Part of the condition for entering the contest was to document his experience. As he explored the ground floor, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The living room, with its moth-eaten drapes and broken furniture, felt particularly oppressive. He found an old family portrait hanging above the fireplace, depicting a stern-looking couple and their 2 young children. The eyes of the family seemed to follow him as he moved, and he quickly averted his gaze. As night fell, the house seemed to come alive with sounds. The creaking of the floorboards, the distant tapping of what sounded like fingers on glass, and an occasional whisper just at the edge of hearing. David tried to focus on his camera, narrating his experience in an attempt to keep calm. Around midnight, he heard it, a soft, melodious humming coming from upstairs. Against his better judgment, he decided to investigate. The narrow staircase groaned under his weight as he ascended. The humming grew louder, more distinct, and led him to a door at the end of the hallway. David pushed the door open to reveal a child's bedroom, untouched by time. Toys were scattered across the floor, and a small bed was neatly made with a faded quilt. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence. He felt a cold hand brush against his neck and spun around, but the hallway was empty. Panicking, he rushed back downstairs, his heart pounding. He tried to rationalize the experience, blaming it on nerves and overactive imagination. But deep down, he knew something was very wrong with this house. David spent the rest of the night in the living room, too afraid to sleep. As dawn approached, he noticed a faint light coming from the basement door, which he had been explicitly told not to enter. He felt an inexplicable pull toward it, like a moth to a flame. Ignoring the warning in the email, he descended the narrow staircase into the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and the light intensified. At the bottom, he found an old wooden door, slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he entered a large, dimly lit room. In the center stood a stone altar covered in strange symbols and surrounded by burnt-out candles. On the walls were photographs of various people, all looking terrified. Among them, David recognized the family from the portrait upstairs. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. He turned, and the temperature dropped further. A whisper echoed through the room, growing louder and more insistent. The shadows on the walls began to move, coalescing into a dark figure.
"Leave now, or join us forever,"
it hissed. David's mind raced as he fumbled for the doorknob. When he finally wrenched the door open, he bolted up the stairs and out of the house, not stopping until he was safely in his car. The sun was rising, casting the house in a deceptively peaceful light. David never spoke about that night again, nor did he ever attempt to collect the prize money. The footage he had recorded was too disturbing to watch, filled with unexplained phenomena and his own terrified narration. He deleted it, hoping to forget the horrors he had witnessed. But the house on Harrow Lane was not done with him. In the weeks that followed, David found himself plagued by nightmares and strange occurrences. He would wake up to find himself standing in front of his bedroom mirror, staring at his own reflection with hollow eyes. One night, he awoke to the sound of humming, the same melodic tune from the house, coming from somewhere within his own home. His blood ran cold as he realized that the spirits of Harrow Lane had followed him. David knew he had to go back, to confront whatever had attached itself to him. He returned to the house, determined to end the nightmare once and for all. As he stepped through the door, the familiar chill enveloped him and the whispers began anew. This time, he headed straight for the basement, guided by a sense of inevitability. The altar was as he had left it, but now it pulsed with a sinister energy. The photographs on the walls had changed, and among the terrified faces, he saw his own. The dark figure materialized once more, but this time, David did not flee. He stood his ground, demanding answers. The figure's eyes glowed with malevolence as it spoke.
"You are ours now, David. You entered our domain, and you cannot leave."
With a final, desperate effort, David reached out and overturned the altar. The ground shook, and the walls began to crack. The figure screamed, a sound of pure agony, and the shadows writhed in pain. David felt himself being pulled into the darkness, his vision blurring. Just as he thought he would be consumed, a blinding light filled the room, and he awoke to find himself outside, the house collapsing behind him. David never fully recovered from his ordeal. The experience had left him scarred, both physically and mentally. He moved far away, hoping to escape the lingering influence of the house on Harrow Lane. But no matter where he went, the humming followed. It haunted his dreams and crept into his waking moments. He knew he would never be free of the curse he had unleashed. Years later, the house still stands, a decaying monument to the darkness within. Occasionally, a thrill seeker or curious traveler will venture inside, drawn by the legends. And each time, they find the same warning etched into the basement wall. Enter at your own risk, the house never forgets. And so, the cycle continues, with new souls drawn into the web of horror that is the last house on Harrow Lane. And that's the chilling tale of the last house on Harrow Lane. I hope you enjoyed the story and felt the same spine-tingling fear that haunted David. Remember, sometimes the most ordinary places can hide the darkest secrets. If you loved this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more terrifying tales. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to David after he left the house, or share your own spooky experiences. And as always, beware of the shadows, and never ever enter a place where you're not welcome, especially if it's the last house on Harrow Lane. Until next time, stay scared.